Hey Craig, how you doing? Good to see you again.
Good, thanks. Middle of prep, so you know how it is,
I was,
right?
I was just gonna say I feel my Craig aura over there is a little bit weaker than usual, but that's what happens when you are in prep.
Yeah, there's a bit of an energy drain going on, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably cues us up for an ideal time to just first start touching on nutrition. This is something we can talk about a lot,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
let's talk about a little bit some of our past experiences, what we've tried and what's worked and what hasn't worked, where we are now. And you're more of a nutrition guy than I am, to be admitted. I don't purport to be an expert in things I'm not. So I will cue that over to you and I will tell you about my experiences. But let's see.
Cool.
You take this show, Craig.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. So this is like a topic that's really near and dear to me for sure, because when I started training, I think I mentioned to you in the past that I didn't have that moment where I got into the gym and I started lifting weights and all of a sudden muscles started appearing everywhere and it was great. And then people told me I should do a bodybuilding show. It was quite the opposite, right? I went into the gym. I got absolutely no response. I did not get big. I remember there was this one girl that I was talking to who was, she worked at a restaurant, and I was like a pretty regular at this restaurant. And I remember her saying to me after about 3 months, like, I heard that you are, training. You tell me you're training all the time and stuff, but where are all the muscles? And I was just like, I don't know. Yeah, I keep doing what they tell me in Flex magazine, and I'm still not anywhere. So back in those days, I did, I think I mentioned in a previous podcast that I started to pay attention to nutrition a little bit more and discovered that I had to force feed in order to gain, etc. So it was really when I started to figure out the nutrition thing that I got really passionate about bodybuilding, because that was when I finally got to see the response that I wanted to see the whole time, which is, of course, growing muscle and getting stronger. So nutrition is a very near and dear point to me, and that's really what made the difference in for me. So by way of background, I have a certification from Precision Nutrition and sports and exercise nutrition, and that was a very good course. It was very interesting, kind of more suited towards sort of general population people as opposed to bodybuilders specifically. And also it was geared more towards sort of general population and athletes, but not necessarily athletes striving for hypertrophy and body composition. So so a little bit different. But that said, as we were discussing in our research video, I think that really the best way to learn about bodybuilding things is from bodybuilders and from bodybuilding coaches, and also supplementing that with research, etc. So we don't really have, I mean, of course there's the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, and then there's Scott Stevenson put out a really good book, which is called Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach.
Yeah, I have that excellent book. Yes,
covers a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
but before then, there was no textbook on how to become a bodybuilder or whatever. So
I mean, I can touch on that a bit again, because I think about 10 years on you. So my early days, there was no internet. The books that were available, I did mention when I read books when I was younger, diet was very little talked about. It really wasn't. The things I remember from those days was like eat a lot of food. It was like, back then it was like eat red meat, eggs, drink whole milk, drink cream, things like that, like high caloric stuff, and go very low carbohydrate for diets. And that was the depth and breadth of the guidance was very, very slim. So my time doing my first show, I had no idea what I was doing.
Oh wow,
no idea. There wasn't anything to tell me. There was nothing to read. There was nothing to guide me by. So things changed a lot for you, and you took advantage of that, of course. So
I kind of I was really lucky timing wise, because that was when things started to get more published on the internet, etc. So the original iterations of trying to watch my diet and stuff was just basically eating more food, force feeding, because Flex magazine had written, I remember, 1 gram of protein per pound, body weight, and like I can't remember. I think it was a huge range. I remember that being that it was like something like 2 times your body weight to 8 times your body weight of carbohydrates. Like, thanks, guys. It's not really helpful, but it was something like that. And then and then they didn't even really mention fats. So to me, I read that and I was like, okay, a gram per pound of protein. Okay, how much is that? I don't know, but it probably means that I should go have another sandwich.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the extent of it. But then, of course, as information started to get out on the internet a little bit more, looking at things like so there was one diet that I tried out that worked really well, and it was quite interesting because I didn't really recognize what it was at the time. Of course, now looking with the benefit of hindsight and a lot more knowledge on the topic, I can see exactly why it worked. But it was called the lean gains diet, which is basically like you have a your protein levels are about equivalent, whether it's a training day or a rest day. On your training days, you consume mainly carbohydrates, not so much extra fats. And then on your rest days, you have like more fats and lower carbohydrates. So it was actually kind of like, so the way that I simplified it was like a chicken and rice day and a steak and salad day. And that worked really well, for what it did. And we also had the benefit that time of like online TDEE calculators and stuff, total daily energy expenditure calculators and stuff. So you could, use those to try to figure out roughly how many calories you need to be consuming, et cetera, et cetera. I've touched upon my lightning fast metabolism, so those calculators always came in low for me, but still, it was it gave us a starting point. And again, as we were discussing with science, right? Science provides a great starting point, but it's after that you have to adjust and adapt.
Right.
So started with that, had great results. In hindsight, obviously, that's a mixture of carb cycling. And also controlling your macronutrient intake, which is basically what dieting is all about. So so that was I can see in retrospect why that works, but that works better than, of course, I had tried like keto. I tried and then the earlier iteration of keto before it was called keto, when it was called Atkins, right? So Atkins diet, tried the keto diet, and then carnivore came out. I used to call one, what was it? The caveman diet, which was
caveman diet, paleo
that
diet.
actually became a thing, but I used to just call it the caveman diet because it was like, I'm just going to eat like meat sources and then some leafy stuff, right?
Yeah. Let me just for the reader's sake, the listener's sake, we're not just talking about diet as in getting cut, but also in growing too. I think you're outlining the fact that you were a bit of an outlier, that it was a struggle for you to gain.
No, absolutely. So
you had to overeat, especially compared to myself. I think where I had to eat to gain tissue, you had to do that much more, right?
No, it was it's always been a struggle, even now. So the amount of calories that I have to eat is pretty obscene, right? So I mean, I was sharing with you earlier that I'm prepping for a show right now.
Right.
I'm 10 weeks out. I just had my diet. I just had my calories reduced, but still I was eating like 320 grams of protein and 470 grams of carbohydrates with about 45 fats. And that's just the direct macros. It's not like I'm not counting the protein in rice.
Right.
I'm not counting the fat in chicken breast.
Okay.
Right. That is just straight up like,
the trace stuff that adds up over time.
Exactly. So it's like, so the I'm cutting on over 3,500 calories.
Right. Yeah.
So by the time you put it all together,
again, for people listening to this, like you're cutting on 35. I weighed myself in the gym today. I was 102.6 kilograms at 171, and I'm probably eating 3,500 calories roughly right now. So I'm not fat, I'm pretty.
No, you're lean always.
I'm always lean, but that just shows what a gap there is.
For sure. And the thing is too, is like I'm not dissimilar from you on the height size. So I'm 172, and I'm currently 88 kilograms. So, or for our non-metric speaking friends, I guess I'm 5'7.5", about 195 right now.
Yeah.
And I'm cutting at 3,500 calories.
Yeah.
So like, a lot. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. So anyways, obviously with my blessed genetics, that made putting on size, putting on weight, putting on muscle very, very challenging for me. And that's the reason why I got into the nutrition stuff so much.
Yeah.
I've had the good fortune of so after I saw the impact of nutrition, as I said, I studied it myself, but then I also subscribed to John Meadows' website, which is called Mountain Dog Diet at the time. And that was fascinating to me because he talked about like off season and also competition prep. And for competition prep area, he would actually like write out the diet that he had his clients on, and then showed progress photos and the changes that he made to the diet along the way. And that's when I started to realize, wow, there's a lot of like things that need to be controlled here. And there's a lot involved in a prep, and so originally I actually reached out to him for coaching because I decided after I went to the Olympia in 2014 that I wanted to compete. So I thought I would hire him, get ready, blah, blah, blah. He was busy, but he referred me to his right-hand man. So I got to work with Matt Berzicott is his name. And I worked with him for like 5 years in order to kind of broaden my knowledge. I, specifically said to Matt that I think he's an excellent coach and I love him as a guy. He's a fantastic guy. But I wanted to try to learn something different. So I went and I worked with Justin Harris for a couple of years. And then recently I've actually gone back to Matt because, as I said, he's an excellent coach and an outstanding dude. So that's why I'm working with him again. Justin was an outstanding guy as well, and very, very detailed and whatnot. But the thing that's very interesting to me is I think that amongst the top coaches, there's almost like a best practice when it comes to whether it's off season or, competition prep type of situation. So, generally speaking, I find that most of the top coaches will have people not run the same amount of calories every day. So there'll be some sort of fluctuation in the calories with the training days with a higher caloric intake than the rest days. Also, often there's sometimes there's a variation in terms of the macronutrient breakdown between the rest days and also the training days. And then there are some and then there's sort of like there's usually kind of like a cheat meal thrown in there somewhere.
Off season.
Even in prep.
So
the at the end of the day, right? Like if you break it down, we eat 6 times a day, and there's so that's one thing that's common amongst them is it generally sort of 5 or 6 meals a day.
Just to be able to get enough nutrition down. And
also in a prep context, when you're in a severe caloric deficit, it gives you a little bit of a food every couple hours.
True.
Which helps to make it a bit easier to make it through the day and makes the troughs a little bit lower, I think. And also in addition to that, especially in a prep context, like Justin explained it very well when he said that what we want a constant stream of amino acids going through your system. So that's like eating every 2.5 to 3 hours, right? If you eat a piece of steak or eat a piece of chicken, that's not going to be fully digested within that time period. So you've got this drip coming into your system so that whenever you need protein, it's accessible. And that's the whole, like, protein is the only macronutrient that has to be replaced in your system because it turns over.
It can't be stored.
Correct. The other stuff can be stored. So if you have it in excess, it'll be stored, but also it can be used for energy. So, if you have too little of that around, then it'll draw on your body fat, etc., to fuel your system. But on the other hand, if you don't have enough protein in your system, then you're going to lose muscle.
Yeah, your body's certainly not going to accrue more. No way.
Exactly.
Take care of
You're not going to accrue. You'll be lucky to maintain, right?
Yeah, it has basic functions to take care of too. The protein's also required for as well, as people kind of forget about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why all bros have a high protein diet, basically. Or
Yeah.
Particularly in a prep context, that's the reason why protein numbers are so high.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of those are kind of the really, really broad brushstrokes in terms of, how many carbs does somebody need? I mean, in prep context, as I said, like I've been cutting on 470 grams of carbs, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like I know people that have to be under 100.
Yeah.
So, there's
I'm one of them. My low days, I get to 50. My low days were 50.
Yeah. And then that's where low days are 50. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Felt terrible, but that's what I had to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I think
out of, sorry, I was talking about the cheat meals, right? But if you have like 6 meals a day or 5 or 6 meals a day, I'll say 6 meals a day because that's what I'm used to. And that's usually what I recommend people eat. If 6 meals a day, 7 days a week, that's 42 meals.
Yeah.
Right? Out of 42 meals, if you have one meal that's dirty, not really going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to like, oh, I've screwed everything up, right? Because 1 out of 42 is what, 6%?
Yeah.
Your diet or something like that. I think
again, for people, I think, my impression, of course, I think the whole cheat meal things has gotten out of proportion, especially because of social media.
Yeah.
People think a cheat meal is 2 boxes of donuts and a pizza.
No.
And these people are not even dieting in the first place, right? So let's just get that out of the way. A cheat meal for you and I probably is eating more of the good stuff as opposed to eating garbage.
Guilty. I'm a burger and fries guy.
Yeah, very. Actually, I don't. To be frank, between you and me, I don't really call burger and fries really all that evil. Fries maybe is kind of, you can put it on the side, but I at least like to say, take a burger, disassemble it in the plate, bread, lettuce, tomato, a hamburger.
Yeah,
it's not really all that bad, right? It's just that I think that's okay, but I don't want anybody to misunderstand that we're talking about eating pizzas for.
Especially living in Japan, right? I mean, the burgers that you get here are just such high quality that like everyone pays such attention to the details of the ingredients that they're using. It's a little bit different than like some mass produced, like made out of sawdust type thing,
right? Yeah. So it's not all that awful as foods. I just want to just get that out of the way. We're not, if you're serious about what you're doing, you could destroy your progress with a really, really bad meal and say,
absolutely, yeah, no. And if you go like in a context of a prep, especially when you're in a caloric deficit, you have to know that like every extra calorie that you're eating has to come off somewhere. Yeah. So, and it's like
stay back somewhere.
Yeah, no, because there's like no, you can't escape the laws of thermodynamics, as they say, right? So
yeah.
In terms of like having a regular meal, to be able to have like a meal with your family on Sunday night,
right?
Or to if you have colleagues from overseas that are in town or something like that, in those respects, then having the freedom to have that one meal a week, can make or break in terms of sort of mental, I don't know, I wouldn't say stability, but like it can make a huge difference in terms of one's mental state and well-being, really.
Right. And you probably wouldn't go too deep into it when you're in the close to a show. There's only a few weeks to go, but certainly, further out or definitely off season. I think John Jewett called it calorie stealing.
Yeah.
So like take 20% from tomorrow today. We have to pay it back tomorrow.
Yeah.
But in the big scheme of things, that may give you that mental break, like you say, or say as a wedding or even, God forbid, a funeral you got to go to and you got to eat something off menu.
Yeah, exactly.
These things have to happen and you can accommodate them. It's not the end of the world, but of course, like some bad traditional Gen Pop dieters don't go off the rails because you broke your diet either.
Yeah.
Get back on it. You can definitely do that.
And to your point there, I mean, there are exceptions to like 4 weeks out. If you're behind, then don't have a cheat meal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unless you're ahead, don't have a cheat meal because you just can't afford to simply.
Yeah. And it's one other thing too about cheat meals, like they didn't exist when I was younger.
Yeah,
there's no such thing as a cheat meal. Like I had this guy who's kind of a trainer back in my gym in the 90s, early 90s.
Uh-huh.
And he just loved to talk about how he's going to make me suffer. Work with me and I'll make you suffer. You'll eat anything in the diet. You'll eat dog crap off the sidewalk. You'll be saying, I'm like, no, I won't. No, yes, you will. Yes, you will. Because it was about, maybe it's different now, but back in those days, it was about making you miserable.
Right.
And there was no way out. There was no pressure release of a cheat meal. And I don't know if that was the right thing to do either. I think cheat meals.
I don't think so. When you look at the conditioning of the competitors today versus the conditioning of the competitors in the 80s, I'm sorry, the suffering doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like we all suffer.
Yeah.
But it's not the cheat meals.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So so that's kind of some of the things that I've sort of touched upon. I can go more into detail on stuff later, but why don't we just take a couple minutes to walk through sort of what you've noticed about nutrition over the years, etc.
Yeah, my exposures to nutrition, again, like I say, we didn't have the internet. In the early days. I'm dating myself, of course. My first contest was 1988, then 89, then again in the mid 90s I competed. So even mid 90s you barely had the internet. It's bodybuilding information. So in the early days it was just winging it. Basically my first contest, literally I thought that was just eating less of the things I already eat.
Oh wow.
So I was eating like snack bars and stuff on my contest because I was eating less of them. That was it. And I lost weight. I got leaner, but not optimal, of course.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I did better the second time. All my friends like, what did you do? You're not supposed to do that. You're doing it wrong. They taught me about macros and stuff. Again, I was 18 years old.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No information, very young, right? But then after that second show, which was the third show, was the Teenage NPC Nationals in New Jersey. I went down there, and John Perillo was doing a seminar there. And I was introduced to John Perillo's methods of nutrition. And that wasn't so much on season, pre-contest, but it was more off season about gaining mass.
Right.
And that's where I started learning about really getting the calories up there, really getting the macros up there. At that time, still it was relatively low fats, moderate protein, and high carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
I was eating lots of oatmeal. I was eating oatmeal with egg whites in it, all stirred up and cooked by cooking. You know what I mean? Some honey and cap medium chain triglyceride oil in there as well, that kind of thing. But that was all off season. And I didn't really compete again until 1997 when I was living in Japan again. I was kind of encouraged to do a show, and I did. So at that point, frankly speaking, I didn't really know how to diet with great success for show. Okay. I could gain muscle off season. All right. I was 240 pounds when I was 20. Off season, I was a watery 240, but I was a big kid, but getting in shape was always hard. But that year, 97, I don't remember how I found out about it, but I bumped into Lyle McDonald online.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Somewhere. Sure. And I found out about Dan Duquesne's Body Opus diet.
Yeah, sure.
And cyclical ketogenic dieting. I never tried any ketogenic dieting before.
Yeah.
So people don't know Body Opus is basically like a cyclical ketogenic diet in that from basically Monday until, let's say, Friday or even Saturday afternoon, you would eat very low carbohydrate. You would kind of load on Sunday and then taper and take all that glycogen you had stored and burn it off throughout the week and then repeat the cycle. So I was eating, ketogenic diet of very low carbs, high protein, high fat during the week. And the weekends I would eat like breakfast cereal, a lot of bread. In Japan, of course, a lot of rice, mochi, my favorite. I love dango. Those kind of things. I would eat a lot of those. And that worked. I got in the best shape I've ever been in.
Nice.
And frankly speaking, like I did that show completely natural, unassisted at 26 years old, 27 years old. And I look better than I did at 19 enhanced.
Oh, wow.
That usually doesn't happen. You don't get older and look better without help.
No, usually not.
So I learned, okay, my body responds to this kind of diet to get in shape. So like you were saying, like you got to figure out what you tried many different diets. I didn't try so many because I didn't know about so many because the information was limited. But I did find out that, this is how it works for me. And thereafter, always in shows, I've gone lower carbohydrate than probably some of my colleagues. I mentioned earlier, my low carb days will go down to 50 grams per day, which is, face sliding off. You just feel like garbage,
Training too, I imagine.
Yeah. Training was hard. I would take that 50 grams of carbohydrates and usually put them in my intra.
Oh,
So I'm training. I'm sipping,
or
sugar.
pre, for sure.
Yeah. I was always sipping it in the work, and that kept me from my face hitting the floor in the gym, and allowed me to train. But I was never able to consume the kind of calories you do. I think I ended my last show, which was the Amateur Olympia here in Japan in 2019. I was at 1,200 calories, I think, at the end, or maybe a little low, maybe 1,100. Pretty low.
Yeah, that's really low.
Yeah, and I was probably over dieted because I just focused on weight class limits and getting into the light heavyweight, which is about 89 kilograms. So dieting for me was always a bit of a challenge.
Something, once again, I've never had to worry about.
I've been a light heavyweight since I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
In the same weight class, basically all the way through. But just trying to perfect my on-stage presence. And that came from learning about different ways of diet. And it was cyclical ketogenic dieting for me. Still, that's kind of what I like to do. That kind of, I eat, I don't do cheat meals, but I would do a high carbohydrate meal, one meal, usually on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And that might be up to 400 to 500 grams of carbohydrates that day.
Yeah.
And that's no carbs the rest of the week.
Yeah. So that day would feel so good. And then you would suffer badly for 2 days after that, being really hungry.
Actually, I do not enjoy carb loading.
Oh, okay.
I don't like it. The beginning would be okay, but by the end, I'd start feeling.
You reach that point of having had enough. Yeah.
Even with just 400 or 500 grams, talking about a few bagels and stuff like that. Not that much. I didn't feel good. I would feel sluggish for a while.
When I was working with Justin, my high days would be like 900 carbs.
Really high for me.
Yeah. I think I got up to 1,000 once.
Wow.
And again, those are direct macros, right? So
yeah.
So that's like, but the thing that Justin recognized is that's a lot of food volume if you're trying to eat it all clean.
Right.
So he actually allows up to 50% of your carbs as sugary sources.
Okay.
So and this is not when I'm prepping, by the way.
Yeah.
1,000. That's more off season, but
right.
But the high days would so it would be 50% sugary sources. So basically what I would do is you could do something like say if you've got to eat 150 carbs in a meal, which is actually pretty easy. Let's go with a higher number then where it's more difficult, 200. So if you've got to do 200, then you can get like 100 from rice, which is about 300 grams of rice, which is
it's a lot of rice
size portion, right?
Yeah.
And then get another 100 from whatever it may be. Like, you could do fruit juice. You could do like, I used to love doing gummies, right? Because they have those like hard sour ones here, which are, really fun. Yeah. So, stuff like that. And pound those away. Another thing I learned too, when I was on all those hard carb days, is if you take 300 grams of rice, it's kind of like a lot of volume. So what I used to do is I'd put it, and I have this actually on my Instagram, but I would weigh it out in the bowl, and then I would take the shamoji, the thing that you scoop the rice out with, and I'd pack it down, because I noticed that the onigiri, the rice balls that we buy in the stores, are all very tightly packed rice. Right? Yeah, and it makes it like, so you can get an onigiri, which is like 40 grams of carbohydrates.
Yeah,
means that it's probably 130, 140 grams of rice.
Yeah,
like you could get that down in 3 bites because it was all tightly packed. So
they are tightly packed. That's true. Yeah,
figuring that out, I found that if I pack down my rice, right, using the shamoji after I put it in the bowl and make like kind of a mountain, a lump of it, right, then I'd be able to eat that.
You get it down. Yeah,
super fast. So, and also like, you just have more in your mouth at once, so you just get it down faster, and it doesn't feel like as much effort to eat it all.
Yeah,
so that was one thing that helped me out.
It's very psychological, isn't it?
Yeah. When you have a mountain of rice in front of you, it's like,
yeah.
When you're hungry, it's great, but when you're force feeding yourself, not so much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's maybe one of the things we should talk about a little bit too, is like when we talked a little bit about cycling calories and carbohydrates. One of the reasons people do that is not just to stay lean and not just to get big on the other side, but also it becomes quite a task, a chore, to eat a lot of calories every day, one after the other.
Absolutely.
Having that break is also psychologically beneficial too, as well as keep you from going overboard on calories.
Yeah, it's funny. In the off season, I definitely like the low days better, and then in the prep season, then it's like, "Ooh, please give me a high day."
Yeah.
But the thing that I like, so what I was alluding to, and I was talking about your experience where you would have the 1 day load.
Yeah.
Typically, when I was prepping with Justin, we would have one high day, where the whole theory about refilling your glycogen stores and all that sort of stuff happens, and it's great. But then the next 2 days after that, as you deplete your glycogen stores and you've reset kind of your hunger hormones as well, those days are just torture, right? Like, so if I had a high day, but then followed it with a low day or something after, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? Whereas, if you have a medium day after, then it's a little bit easier because you've got some carbs coming in. But
it must be a higher metabolism makes you feel more hungry quick. Because I never got that, but I just felt by when the carbs were pretty much petered out, that I just was very unsteady on my feet by Wednesday.
Right.
And by Thursday, I kind of transitioned to start probably using some more body fat for fuel. Does that feel a little bit better, but not great? And there's none of this kind of feeling great on keto kind of garbage you hear about.
Yeah, that's totally.
But
what that is,
definitely a line I hit.
That's adrenaline from being hungry because your body thinks you're going to die. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I wish more people would appreciate that fact too. You're not feeling high because some kind of awesome energy, epiphany happened in your body. It's like it doesn't want you. It wants you to go out and find more food.
Exactly. So it's giving you that energy burst to get you out there.
Yeah. That is overlooked almost every time people talk about keto.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that the similarities that I've seen with my coaches is really that there's generally, as I said, more calories on training days than on rest days, more carbohydrates on the training days, might be a cheat meal thrown in, whether it's in the form of so Justin was very meticulous in terms of having an actual high day where the protein would be reduced, the carbohydrates would be up, 0 added fats. And then if you had a cheat meal, it had to be last meal of the day. Matt's a little bit more flexible where it's kind of use your common sense, right? And, if you've had a hard training day and you have a couple of hard training days coming up, then, one meal in the evening or something is probably not going to be the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. And then also another thing that I thought was quite interesting that was common between them, and also what I seen a lot on John Meadows' site was the concept of peri-workout nutrition.
Yes.
So even in the depth of off season, keeping your meals pre and post workout without fats in them actually helps to increase the rate of metabolism of what you're eating. So just keeping the protein and the carbohydrates, the metabolism of those elements is faster without fats being present. So obviously heading into a big workout, you want to have your carbohydrates as freely available to you as possible. You also want to have aminos in the system as much as possible, etc. So it makes sense to not have fats there. Intra workout, supplementing with a carbohydrate powder and EAAs, not BCAAs,
for sure,
is key. And then finally in the post workout meal, same theory. We want things to hit the system as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So getting that in, and also you get the added benefit too if you're using a relatively a higher glycemic carb to be able to spike your insulin levels a little bit, which is supposed to elicit a little bit more growth, right? So
right.
So I thought that is interesting to have those meals, and if you're on a carb limited diet, then trying to keep your carbs kind of centered around your workout or revolving around your workout with the workout as the core.
Absolutely.
That's a really important concept too, I think. Because then the carbohydrates, because they don't hang around long.
Right.
It's good to have them in the system when your body needs them the most.
Yeah, and you can, of course, you can load up and store some glycogen, but extracting that glycogen, getting into the bloodstream, making it available to other muscles that are working in the training session is challenging. So, you could have those quick carbs before the workout, or sip the intra like we both do, I'm sure, on season or off season, makes a huge difference in getting, because there's like you said, another ones. There's many ways to skin a cat. I mean, you can eat normal meals throughout the day, mixed meals, and you will drip all the nutrients you need, basically. But it's not optimal. Exactly. When we talk about, you and I on this podcast, mostly about being optimal from our experience, right? And that will mean tweaking these things a little bit, and sometimes removing fat, pre or post meal. You don't have to do that if you're an average person, but if you're looking for optimal performance.
I was just about to say that. I mean, if you look at any science on the topic, I guarantee you, well, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to tell you that it's not necessary.
Right.
Yeah. However, if you look at the results that are being achieved by the top coaches and by the top bodybuilders, you'll see that there is this sort of, as I said, this is an example of two totally different coaches that I've worked with that didn't have, like nobody told them to do it this way, but they've both arrived at that conclusion.
Yeah.
So
I can almost guarantee if I use both of those coaches myself, I would not have the exact same protocol as you have.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, it would be different. They would adapt to my physique and my demands as well. Yeah. Which is part of this journey. I mean, we could talk about nutrition a lot, because I think nutrition, more than anything, more than training, perhaps, is a constant learning journey.
Yes.
Always finding out new things. I'm 55 years old this year, and I'm still finding out new tweaks. And things to tune and learn how my body responds, and maybe that changes over time too. So I'm not really learning anything new. I'm just adapting as I change over time. But that's not true for me alone, I think, though.
Yeah, indeed. No, it's that's a really, really, as we said in the research episode, it's like, I can think of hundreds of experiments that need to be done in this space that may not ever be able to be conducted because they're just too difficult and too high risk in terms of, like, as I said, in the context of a competitive bodybuilder, like, do you really want to be in the group that's on low protein when cutting for a competition to see if that's more optimal? What happens if you lose some of the money?
You'd be in the non-optimal group. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let me to close this out, let me ask you maybe one point you'd like to focus on for off-season nutrition, and then one point for pre-contest you can maybe give our listeners.
Okay, yeah. So for me, in both contexts, in the off-season, you have to eat not when you're hungry, but when it's time. Because if you're like me and you're a naturally skinny guy, then if you rely on your hunger cues, you're never going to get enough food to grow.
Right.
Conversely, when it's prep, you don't eat because you're hungry. You eat because it's time.
Yeah.
And that's because you're going to be hungry all the time. You're going to be fighting off hunger, and you need to think of ways in advance that you're going to handle those hunger pains. So that's why I like eating 6 meals a day that are relatively equally spaced out, because I know that when I eat, in half an hour, I'm going to be hungry, because that's how quickly I get hungry.
Yeah.
I know that if I have a meal coming in 2 hours, that I can think of ways to stall, ways to distract myself. Until that eating point comes along. And that's really, really key. On the other hand, when I'm in a massive caloric surplus and I'm stuffing the food down and stuff, reminding myself and having that reminder that I have to eat now because it's time is the only way that I'll be able to get in the sort of calories that I need to get in. So it's really, when it comes to either context, I would just say the main thing is plot it out, eat because it's time, not because it's hungry. You have to have a plan.
I'll put a little complimentary statement on the off season on that. I think it was Dante who said you have to eat for where you want to be rather than where you are. So if you're trying to grow, you have, if you're 200 pounds, you want to be 240, you have to be eating as if you're 240 to reach 240.
Indeed.
Don't be stupid about it, but you're gonna need more than you need right now if you want to actually reach that goal. And think about that's where you want to be. Eat accordingly, and you have a much better chance of actually reaching your goal. And the same thing works conversely, I think, with dieting in a different way. So we believe the same things in different ways of
yeah.
Well, that was a good fun talk. I appreciate your insight on that. I think we can talk about nutrition a lot more in the future. We should, because there's a lot to dig into there, and a lot people could learn, and we could share and maybe hear back from listeners. So anyway, for this time, thanks very much, Craig, for talking about this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, that was fun. As I said, this is like, I'm super passionate about this one, because if I didn't figure out nutrition, I'd still be, 135 pounds. So
excellent point. And if I didn't figure out nutrition, I'd still be a fatty on stage. So which is embarrassing. I don't want to do that. So I guess until next time, everybody, hope you like and subscribe. Let us know what you want to hear more about. We will be back with more. And if you let us know what you want to hear about, we'll be back with more of that. So thank you very much for listening. And Craig, thank you for being with me again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt.
Yeah, okay.
All
Take it easy.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.